What is up, my fellow Avatar: The Last Airbender fans? So, as we all know, the live-action series has now debuted on Netflix, and everybody's kind of currently in the process of watching it, or everybody has already binged it. And so far, I've just had a great time seeing the fandom watch this show and react to this show. It seems like everybody's at least been pretty positive. I've seen critiques, obviously, of the show and reviews and things like that, but it seems like a lot of people are having a good time with it. And that just makes an Avatar fan happy. But I had a lot of fun reacting to episode 1. That's the first time I've ever done like a long form reaction video like that, and watching that first episode was just a special experience. Waking up super early and sitting down and watching something that I've been anticipating for so dang long. It was just awesome. But now I'm currently in binge mode. I'm watching all of the episodes through. And so what I'm going to be doing moving forward is just reviews and breakdowns of each episode as we go along all the way to the finale. So I'm going to start today with episodes 2 and 3. We have Warriors and Omashu. And I tell you what, that Omashu episode was pretty down to earth. Am I right? But before I dive in, as always, make sure you smash like and subscribe if you're new here. Because if you don't, I mean, well, that's just kind of a Momo. I mean, no. That was probably my worst one yet. But let's start with episode 2, Warriors. And what did you guys think about this? Please let me know down in the comments immediately, just kind of all your thoughts regarding this episode. I gotta admit, I was pretty dang high on this show after episode 1. So going into episode 2, I was just like, okay, here we go. Like, what comes next? And as far as like a general review or just like kind of my basic thoughts on the episode, I really enjoyed this one as well. It didn't really miss a beat as far as the emotion was concerned coming off of that first episode. And that's something that I was maybe a little bit nervous about. I was like in tears at the first episode. There were several moments that really had me. And so I was hoping that they didn't really take their foot off the gas when it came to that, but I also did want to see a little bit more lightheartedness from the characters, and I feel like we did get that. Obviously, with every episode, there's going to be a lot of changes that we have to move through when we're comparing it to the original series. A lot of us went into this thing knowing that it's not going to just be a straight up one-to-one adaptation, and personally, that's not at all what I was wanting. And so I've been excited going into these episodes about all the little differences and how they utilize these. And the first thing that we get in this episode is the waterbending scroll. Instead of stealing it like she does in the original series, Katara actually finds this in her bag. And it's a gift left from Gran with a little note. And so I thought that was pretty sweet. It kind of just avoids that entire subplot and it keeps things moving. But the best part about this entire scene was the introduction of probably the best character in Avatar: The Last Airbender history, Momo. And this was one of those moments that after just doing that reaction, I was like, dang it, I wish I was doing a reaction right now, because I freaked out, man. I was so excited to see Momo, and he looks great. But obviously, the main bulk of this episode is on Kyoshi Island. And we can kind of start on that side of things. I think that just the makeup of Kyoshi Village was really cool. I thought the introduction of the Kyoshi Warriors was a lot of fun. And then just the relationship between Suki and Sokka within this episode. Obviously, the dynamics were a little bit different than they were in the original. In the original, Sokka was very much like, nah, you girls can't fight, blah, blah, blah. In this one, I feel like Sokka was less of the opposition and Suki was more of it. Like, Suki was kind of the weirdo. I loved all the little jokes that Sokka kept making about, like, can you just wear a bell? But I talked a bit about Suki heading into this. She's a very important character. She becomes very important later on in the series, and giving her the amount of time that they did in this episode, the amount of time that we got to get to know her character, I think is going to pay off in the long run. And the way that they worked with Sokka and Suki within this episode, bringing them together, personally, I think that there was enough there to make me feel something in the end of the episode. You know what I mean? There's certainly an argument to be made that, you know, I wish that this was split up into like 3 episodes. Like, I wish we got a lot more of that. It does go by really quick, but for what we got, I'm pretty happy with it. But I'll kind of just go back and forth here because the other side of the episode was a lot of fun too. We had Ken Luong, the introduction of Commander Zhao. He's Commander Zhao at this point. And this was a performance that I was like, I don't know. At first I was like, I don't know, dude. This is weird because Zhao in the original is so stern and intense. We immediately have that Agni Kai between Zuko and Zhao, which we didn't get in this, unfortunately. I don't think that they're gonna really have that. I believe at least the point that I'm at now after episode 3, it would have already happened, and so that's too bad. But then looking at Zhao, he's very much kind of like a just a little snake. They're emphasizing how much he's trying to claw for power and kind of this Game of Thrones type feeling thing. He's plotting and planning, and you can clearly tell he's just trying to go behind Zuko's back. I think Zuko kind of feels it. For some reason, Iroh is just absolutely blind to it. But the more that this episode went on, the more I was like, okay, I see what we're doing here with Zhao. And then after finishing the episode, I was like, okay, I'm fully on board. I really like the arc that they're trying to give him, and they're also giving him a little bit more time, a little bit more room. I like the little dynamics between him and whoever that guy is, his assistant and stuff, like his little office. You can tell he's kind of coming from nowhere and he's really trying to build himself up. But he also seems very powerful. You know, the end of this episode, he's a powerful bender, but he's now a part of a bigger game. He's seeing things that he's never seen before in the Avatar. And so, yeah, I think Zhao is, it's very unique compared to the original. And then across from that with Zuko, I found it very interesting how instead of them just immediately being at odds throughout the entire season, they're kind of working together. Like, that's a bit of a twist. They're kind of working together, but clearly Zhao is going behind Zuko's back. So we know that they're at odds, but I did find it interesting how the plot is using them coming together to kind of rip them apart. But then back to Kyoshi, and specifically Avatar Kyoshi. That was badass, dude. That is when this episode went from 0 to 100 for me, because I was sitting there like, okay, cool. Well, they're adapting Kyoshi Island really well. Everything looks great. All the characters seem pretty great. But I found myself kind of like, okay, cool, this is a good episode. But the second that the Kyoshi stuff started, Aang goes into the spirit world. We see that for the first time. You know, I think that it's going to get heightened a little bit more. The spirit world as of this episode was very much just like a filter on a camera, you know? But the introduction to Avatar Kyoshi, how massive she was. She was very tall and very just brooding, and the sheer power that she had. You could tell just by the way that she spoke. You could tell she's hardened by her past, and she's kind of the stern teacher that Aang needs right now. And I love the lesson that she was giving to him. Hope doesn't come without a cost. But by far, the best moment of the episode is Zhao attacking Kyoshi Village, and Kyoshi taking over Aang in the Avatar state and landing in the middle of that village and using all the elements and twisting all these dudes up in the air. This was just one of the coolest live-action bending scenes I've ever seen. It quite possibly is probably the best that I've ever seen up until this point. But yeah, I mean, you know, I talked a little bit about Suki and Sokka. I think Katara really didn't have much to do within this episode. She's just kind of learning waterbending, and Aang is there too. And the only two notes that I actually made after this episode, I wrote these down, was that Aang seems just very serious. He seems very serious, and Momo needs more screen time. Momo and Appa, to be honest. It's hard to adjust from how much of a kid Aang is within the original, and how excited and over the top he is, and always wanting to go and have fun, and let's not be serious, let's go do this. Shifting that to Gordon's performance, which has been great so far. The kid is acting his heart out, but it's been very serious in tone, and it's something that I think that I can get used to. I certainly was used to it in the first episode, but I'm also hoping that they have a little bit of fun with him throughout this series. So I just want to see Aang smile, man. You know, that'd be very, very nice. But this is a real world situation, and he did just wake up after 100 years, shortly after finding out he was the Avatar, and now he's found out that all of the airbenders are dead. There was a massive genocide, and the father figure he had in his life is also gone. So probably be a pretty hard thing to come to terms with. But yeah, episode 2, I thoroughly enjoyed it though. Like I said, coming off of episode 1, I was kind of on a high, and this episode continued to deliver for me. But now let's talk about episode 3, Omashu. When we talk about changes made to the original, this is the episode where it really starts to take place. They did a ton of shifting and kind of putting the puzzle pieces together within this episode. There's a lot of different characters coming together in one place that all were in separate episodes, but now they're kind of in the same spot. And you also start the episode with something that is brand new that we haven't seen before. And although there's been emotional moments within the season so far, I think that this is the most excited that I've gotten so far. The start of this episode, when Elizabeth Yu walked out and she had her hair tied up and she was acting like a little Earth Kingdom girl who's suffering and lost her mom and brother and that kind of stuff, I just was like, dude, let's go. Let's go. Azula is here and sneaking all those guys in, and we get the real introduction to Fire Lord Ozai. We had a short little snippet at the end, a little tease at the end of episode 2, but getting him in episode 3, a nice speech, a nice monologue from him. Daniel Dae Kim looks brilliant. You could feel just his energy and his power. The throne room was freaking awesome with the fire lit behind the throne. Oh man, I was so into the atmosphere of all of this. And then Azula taking off the little head wrap and revealing herself, and the music kind of flaring up, and then Ozai just burning all of those people and it flashing in Azula's eyes. That's where I was hoping this show was gonna go. And so moments like these, I'm just like, yes, dude, like they're doing it. Like this is how ruthless and bad that I wanted the Fire Nation to be, because this is really what you want from an adaptation, at least getting older, you know, like for a more mature audience. Like if it was a 1-to-1 adaptation for kids, you know, I'm sure I would be excited and I would watch it, but there's just a different level you can reach when you're going for a mature audience, and it's stuff like this that just captures that tone, that pinpoints it for me, and I'm just like, bro, that is awesome. But like I was just talking about, we saw some serious sides to our characters, and we actually see a little bit of fun from our characters in this. Sokka definitely had a couple moments within this episode that made me laugh. One of the first ones, this was actually Momo. So Momo did get a little bit more screen time in this. It's when Sokka's walking back with all the food, and then it pans down and Momo has all the food too. I thought that was so great. But they go to the city of Omashu, and in my head, I was thinking boomy, 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 boomy. Like it's all going to be boomy. But no, it was Teo, the Mechanist, and Jet. There's this whole kind of subplot of Fire Nation people terrorizing the city, you know, blowing bombs off and stuff like that. But like I said, there's a lot going on, and cramming this all together, I think it would be very easy for things to get very convoluted and out of control. And I felt like they made all of these pieces work really well. And stepping aside a little bit, just talking about Omashu in general, walking up to this city when they're standing in line, just the view of it, the cart system, looking at all of that, it's spectacular. Huge props to everybody working on this show. It's been unbelievable so far. All of the design work is awesome. But they meet up with Teo, and I gotta say, this young kid was one of the highlights of this episode for me. Lucian River Kawan, I think I'm saying that right. I just thought that his performance was great. His innocence, you know, portraying that role. Obviously, he doesn't know what his dad is really up to, but something about this kid, just, I don't know, every second he was on screen, I was really drawn to him. I really wish that we could have seen him flying around a little bit more in the glider. They just showed that for a quick second. I was hoping for a lot more of that. But Katara obviously had a lot more to do in this episode as well, and that ties in with Jet. And, you know, you bring in Jet, you bring in all the freedom fighters, Smeller B, Pipsqueak, the Duke, Longshot. I thought Longshot was like an incredible cast. That guy looks so much like the cartoon. But Jet also was good. This guy Sebastian Amoruso, I thought the performance was great, and he brought that essence to Jet. That kind of uplifting and strong personality that's very much in charge, but you know something's going on there. You know that it just doesn't feel right. Personally, with how many times I've watched the original series, I've never been that into the character of Jet. But all in all, I think that this guy portrayed him great. We'll probably see more of him, and I'm excited for that. I think he did a great job at roping in Katara, and then I think that the writers did a great job at utilizing that to build Katara's character. I think that this episode in general did a great job for at least Sokka and Katara. There's the moment with Sokka with the Mechanist where they're talking about him being an engineer, and he starts to think a little bit about like, maybe I am good at this. Like, who says what I have to be? I loved a lot of the little small moments and small details within this episode. Katara getting better at water bending. I think the CGI so far on the water bending has been flawless. I mean, that's at least to me. I'm really not too nitpicky when it comes to that kind of stuff, but just watching it, I've just been constantly blown away by it. But then, yeah, obviously we have to turn the page over to the Fire Nation stuff. We got Zuko and Iroh they're working with Zhao, and Zuko and Iroh go into Omashu, and I found that very interesting. And Aang and Zuko have that face-to-face confrontation that I was talking about that I missed out on in the first episode, and so I was so happy to see this. I was so happy to see them have a little bit of hand-to-hand combat, and Dallas Liu is just killing it with the martial arts. It was so sweet. I think just in general, as far as the first 3 episodes goes now, Dallas is my standout. He's doing such a great job as Zuko. Even just the little subtleties, just how angry he is. That one dude comes in and tries to talk to him and Iroh, and they're planning, and he just screams at this guy. Like, you can see that inner rage and conflict within him, and it's giving me a lot of hope for the future with him as the actor that's in this role. But I also have a lot of hope when it comes to his sister, dude. Azula is so good. Elizabeth Yu is already crushing it for me, and she's only been in a couple little scenes, but the little archery scene with Mei and Ty Lee. I like both of these actresses. Obviously, they still haven't had that much screen time, but it's so much fun to see all 3 of these girls talking together. I loved Mei sitting there, and she's twirling this little dagger, and she's just like looking super badass, and Ty Lee's just asking all these questions, but it really is back to Azula. She's over there in the Fire Nation playing her own game, and I love that we're getting to see that. Just the opportunity to get to see what's happening over there. As much as I love the first season of the original series and the huge tease at the end of it with Ozai being like, I sent you my daughter, Azula, and you're like, oh my god. I think that it was a smart move if we're going to build up these 2 characters with Azula and Ozai to bring them in a tad bit earlier. I'm kind of guessing that there's probably not going to be too much more screen time from both of them. I'd imagine they just get a little bit more throughout the rest of the season, but from what we have got, I've just gotten very excited about that. So yeah, you know, I mean, I could talk all day about this episode. I really could. I think the one thing that I was thinking that kind of hindered the episode for me the entire time, I was just thinking, when are we going to get to Boomy? When are we going to get to Boomy? Are we going to have time for Boomy at this point? And towards the end, it became very clear, like, oh no, this was just tying in the Teo and the Mechanist story and tying in Jet. And so we see a little bit of Boomy at the end. I'm very excited about that and to see where episode 4 goes. But as for this episode, I thought it was solid. I thought it was very, very solid. Yeah, guys, that's episode 2 and 3. Now I'm going to be moving on to 4 and 5. I'm going to do 6 and 7 after that, and then I'm going to do a full episode for the finale. So keep checking back on my channel. As always, thank you guys so much for the support that you've been showing these Avatar videos. Answering your guys' comments, reading your guys' comments has been an amazing time, but also just building this community of like-minded, positive folks that like talking about Avatar. Like, that just makes my day. So thank you again. Please let me know all of your thoughts and comments down below. Did you like episodes 2 and 3? Obviously, the whole series is out at this point, so I'm not too worried about spoilers. What are you thinking about the season so far? What did you think about the season? Let me know all of that down below. I would love to read it. But then, as always, make sure you smash like on this video. Subscribe if you're new here. I'd love for you to reach out to me on X. I'm at Jones Vibes Only. And then don't forget to keep up the good vibes, guys. But that was episodes 2 and 3, and now on to 4 and 5.
Jones Vibes.